Semifinals are in the books. A dramatic come-from-behind win for Argentina. That's what they do, man. That sets up a showdown between them and Spain. It's the old guy versus the young guy. Messi versus Lamal. Sunday in what should be a sweltering situation in New Jersey. Joining us now, he's been covering the World Cup for Forbes, Field Level Media, among others. He's our friend Ian Nicholas Quillen, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Ian, it's Glenn. How in the world does Argentina keep doing this?
Well, I think you have to ask Thomas Tuchel that, for starters. That was a game where if England shows any interest in keeping the ball after going up 1-0, they might have a considerably different outcome. But you can't just sit and bunker and park the bus against a guy like Lionel Messi. Like, you just can't do it.
It's funny because we were doing this World Cup pool, and Griffin has Argentina, and so he was despondent, obviously, when he fell behind. But he actually said, and I completely agreed with him, at like the 75-minute mark, he was like, yeah, but if they just keep playing on their heels like this, there's no way Argentina doesn't break through. And I was like, I think you're probably right, although I really thought that France was going to get at least one late yesterday, the way that they were being aggressive, and boy, sure enough, they broke through big time. I don't disagree with what you're saying about the England side of it, but still, this is kind of unbelievable how many times Argentina's had their backs against the wall. And some of it is, it's so utterly insane that Messi is still playing at this level. Like, yes, he didn't score the goals, but he made them happen, and he certainly made the second one happen. It is, I don't know how to explain the way that Argentina keeps finding this when their backs are against the wall, because on the whole, I don't know that we would say they've played like a brilliant tournament to this point.
No, I mean, so it's funny. The thing with Messi in particular is, like, he's so fundamentally different from pretty much what any other player does, on the field, in that the amount of energy he conserves by just having an agreement with his team that he doesn't really defend except when he, occasionally finds an opportune time. And, you want to talk about how do you make these plays in late games? Well, it's easier to make the plays in late games if you're consciously, through an entire 90 minutes or beyond, thinking about, okay, I've got to conserve my energy here. I'm not going to empty the tank. I'm going to have something left in the final 15 minutes. And, I don't know exactly how you measure that, but I think it certainly has to come into the equation when you've got, no other team is going to, at the World Cup level, is going to permit one guy to just say, okay, you only have to play on one side of the ball. And that, there are, the last 15 minutes of games are fundamentally different than the first 45 minutes and the first 75 minutes. They are just a different sport, and things get a little more chaotic. And when you have a guy who is as good as he is on the ball in a little bit of chaos, like, of course it's going to work in your favor.
Do we not give enough credit to his supporting cast? Obviously, Fernandez and Martinez scored the goals today, but when we talk about Argentina, we only talk about Messi. And I get it. Messi is perhaps the greatest player that's ever played. But do we not give enough credit to the group that's been around him that's now going to back-to-back World Cup finals?
Well, I think like, they're certainly more talented than people understand, but there also isn't like it's not an NBA situation where you have an obvious number two, where you have an obvious big three or an obvious number two. You had that a little more with Angel Di Maria in 2022, but it's more that, like, I guess the answer is yes and no. Like, I think the floor of their talent level is much higher than people sort of generally consider them, because Messi is so important to them. But in some ways, they deserve the credit they deserve most is being able to have that level of talent and still being able to buy into a concept that lets them function the way they function. You wouldn't get a lot of national teams that were willing to do that, right? Like, and that's partly because, Messi is so singularly unique and so singularly important, not to just the Argentine national team, but Argentine culture, right? He is Argentina. So, like, the best credit I can pay them is almost that we don't think about the rest of their squad, because they've got guys who are big players in big leagues and big teams around the world. So yes and no.
Ian Nicholas Quillen with us here on GCR. Ian, going into the semifinal round, I would have said I just think France is unbeatable, right? Like the way that they had played had just looked so damn brilliant. So the fact that Spain punched them, and I get it, like I felt like that was kind of a gift, the early penalty. Not that it was a bad call, it was just there was no need for it. Like it created something in a bad situation that put them on their heels, but I don't know. Spain really did kind of seem dominant from there. Do I go into the final thinking Spain now is the better side, or is it pretty 50-50 because it's not France?
Well, the thing about international play in particular is styles make fights so much, right? Like styles and game states. So when we say game states, we mean, are you tied? Are you leading? Are you behind?
Mm-hmm.
Once Spain took that lead, they could do exactly what they do best, which is keep the ball. Nobody in the world is better than Spain at keeping the ball. France didn't have an answer for it. It didn't seem like they had a plan B for if their plan A didn't have an answer. They sort of mounted some pressure in the last 10 minutes, but even that was less desperate and less altered of whatever Deschamps' original game plan was. I think against Argentina, they're not going to fall into the trap that England did if they get a lead of playing without the ball. I think, Spain's identity is playing with the ball. And if they can do that from in front, I really like their chances, but I think they have to get that goal first. And if they don't, I think Argentina is going to be perfectly happy to sort of sit a little bit on the counter and look to choose their spots if you will. And I think they'll be more, I think Argentina will be happier to let Spain do what it does and find a responsive answer for that rather than trying to stick to some identity that they have.
It's funny you say that styles make fights because I was going to argue that like I think Argentina's a little bit. I don't think like it was today. Like I don't expect like the complete scrappiness. That to me is just two teams that we knew exactly what to expect. But it feels like there is a storyline of like who can get the other one to play more the way that like can Argentina fluster Spain, get Spain to commit some more fouls? Can Spain force Argentina to have to settle? Like it feels like there's a storyline there to me going into Sunday.
For sure, and I think like Spain's speaking of teams that don't get enough credit, I think Spain doesn't get enough credit. Like Rodri is one of the greatest midfielders on the planet, and we don't really
yes,
talk about
but he
very
wears
much.
his kit tucked in, and I hate it. I still, every time I look at him, I'm like, it just looks so dumb. And then I like some of my the soccer friends in my life messaged me yesterday, and were like, "That's how you know he means business, bro." Like that, it drives me insane every time I see it.
Everybody focuses on Lamine Yamal, but he hasn't really had. He's been, and understandably so. He was coming off an injury, and it's really hard for an 18-year-old coming off an injury to just like suddenly find his feet at a World Cup. And I think he's been fine, but he's sort of an X factor. I think a little bit if he actually has the game that you expect him when he's healthy and in form. Then that's sort of an added bonus, right? Because I don't think we've seen that version of Lamine Yamal yet. But yet, I just think like. Argentina is a collective in that they are a collective to let Messi do what he wants and play off of it. Spain is a collective in that their identity is actually the star. And you won't, that's, in these sort of short sample sizes, identity is really important. And if you can stick to your identity and believe in it and not, suddenly start playing a 5-4-1 or whatever Thomas Tuchel was playing late in that game, it gives you a pretty good chance.
Ian is really worked up about how just brutal it was to watch England do that. And obviously that'll be part of the postscript in England. How does this happen again? Truth be told, they probably could have given up two more in those last. Like,
oh, absolutely.
It was 2-1, and it felt like obviously there was the post, and then Pickford made the brilliant save, but like.
They hit a post again, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was
nuts.
Hit
a post twice.
It was nuts how dominant Argentina was down the stretch. Obviously, I was away for a while, Ian, so you and I did not get to have a postscript on the U.S., who just got obviously bludgeoned. And I read what you were writing, and I understand. I'm in a weird place because yes, it's embarrassing to just get your ass kicked the way. I mean, they did not belong on the same pitch as Belgium. It was a complete ass kicking. That said, unlike, as you know, I was not quite as bullish as you, as Drew was. Like, my expectations going into the World Cup were minimal. And so on the whole, I'm not disappointed by Poke. Like, I really believe that he got about as much out of this group, as I think he was capable of. I think that he stuck with Tim Ream for too long, and that bit him in the ass. But I just never bought in the way that some people did. I thought they were going to lose to Belgium. Maybe I didn't think they were going to get their ass kicked quite that way, but I thought they were going to lose. I didn't think they were as good. Share with me why you think they do need to make change, why you don't believe that Poke got what he could get out of this group.
Well. So first, I'll state, I don't know that I necessarily, I don't know that if he coaches, if this team shows up the way they should have showed up, that they win, right? Like, I don't think that's necessarily a guarantee. I think that was a winnable game, and I think if you pay attention to people who have a grounding in the sport from outside this country, which I think is really important, given the way the whole patriotic fervor can sort of affect how you think. I think, people like Gabriele Marcotti, who's an Italian-born journalist, people like Andres Cantor, the voice of Telemundo, who's an American but born in Argentina, people like Jurgen Klinsmann, our former U.S. national team coach, they all saw that as a winnable game. It doesn't mean you do win it, but it means you can win it. I think Marcotti said something about if he was to pick a best 11 between USA and Belgium, it would be 6 Belgians and 5 Americans. So this idea that, I was really concerned that I saw so much just rush to say, oh, the Belgians are just so much more talented than us, and this is about player development, and this is about how much further we have to go as a country. And, like, no one's saying there aren't still problems with player development in this country, but this group was more talented than that result showed. And I don't think it's a good practice for any serious footballing nation to basically endorse a coach by saying, we think a team playing under its talent level in its biggest game is okay. I just don't think that's a good standard. If you want to liken it locally, like, I don't know that Brandon Hyde could have done anything different with the Orioles in the year that he eventually was let go. But sometimes as an organization, you just have to say this isn't acceptable, right? And the other thing I will add is, if you look at the history of coaches who hang on for a second or longer World Cup cycle, it very rarely goes well. I mean, Poch is a little different because he hasn't had a full cycle. What happens, and I have a theory as to why, which is you play so rarely as an international coach. When you're a club coach, you have loyalties to guys, but you're seeing it every week. And if they're no longer meeting the standard, you can change it in time so you don't get seriously punished. Every coach who's around an international program has to be very, very careful not to let his loyalties get the better of him. And I think more often than not, they do when you have a second or more World Cup cycle. It's a very unique trait to be able to still judge talent fairly for that long.
I do get it. I do think it's unique without having qualifying, without having gone through all of the things that you would go through this cycle. Although, who knows, now with 64 teams, maybe we don't even do qualifying anymore. I mean,
it's not going to be a serious test. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I do get that, but I do think it makes it different, the cycle. And I do think that is, I know what you're saying, but I do think that is a factor for me in the way that I kind of would like to see him go through a cycle with this group.
I just don't understand. I mean, like, if it had been 2-1 or they lose on extra time and lose on penalties, I can understand the argument. I just don't think. I think a lot of people bought into this team so much that they're not willing to be honest about how bad that performance was. It's so funny.
I agree with. This is the crazy part. Like, I'm sort of saying both things. I think it was an ungodly performance. I think it was 4-1, and it might as well have been 12-1, right? Like, right. They didn't belong on the same pitch. And yet, I never expected them to win. You know what I mean? Like, I just did not buy in the way that other people bought in. I didn't think this group was very good.
I guess I'll ask you the question. Did you see any other teams in the round of 16 perform that way?
Not like that. No, you're not wrong. Not like that. I mean, it was an ass kicking. And look,
I mean, Andres Cantor used the word disgraceful.
Oh, it was. They did
so
not
I just
belong
don't understand
there.
if you're going to hold yourself to high standards. I just don't, I was actually a little surprised that Pochettino didn't resign on the spot.
Wow.
A lot of national team managers. I mean, you look at what Roberto Martinez did. He resigned. Yeah. I was, because I don't think, the other part of this, which I didn't get into as much when I wrote about it, is I just don't see him staying for 4 years. I just don't see it.
I think that part is like the part of does he really have any interest in that? I think that part is very relevant.
And it's not, and I don't necessarily think that he would go in not having an interest, but I think he'll get a little bored.
Yeah.
Like the especially when you talk about qualifying is not particularly difficult. Nobody really cares about the Gold Cup. The Copa America, if it's back here, is kind of interesting, but it's still not our tournament. So I think he's going to miss club football sooner than later if he were to stay around.
I think you're right. And I'll also add that I still think there's just a ceiling to what the U.S. can be even 4 years from now. It's not like there's an insane amount of young talent that it's one thing if we're looking at this group. This was an older team. Like, that's what it was.
It wasn't old, but it wasn't young for sure.
And that's what I'm saying. Right. Like, if it'd be one thing if this was. Yeah.
4 years is a long time. There's actually, I think people are actually pretty happy about where the U.S. is at the U20 level right now. I don't think there's a singular superstar, but there's, I think if you look at a lot of the, academy talent around MLS and guys that are just getting ready to sort of make moves to Europe, those guys haven't really shown on the first team level yet, but it's not unreasonable to think that 3 or 4 of those guys could be involved by 2030.
How do we talk like adults about Pulisic specifically at the World Cup? Because you pointed out before the World Cup started that maybe it's unfair to say he's not the guy, but the truth is at the World Cup he has not been the guy.
Well, there's a couple different issues, right? The first is durability.
It's a major issue.
What's the best ability is availability, and he has. If you look at his club season in the second half with AC Milan, I mean, I think people thought he played better than his product was, but he also hadn't played a full 90 since like mid-March, and that was without Milan involved in any European football. They were only playing in the league, and he was still being managed with his hip bursitis or whatever, so he wasn't playing full 90s. Obviously, I don't know if the calf thing was completely separate from that, if it was an ancillary issue. I think all those things are sort of connected. So the first part is, I don't know if he's ever going to be 100% healthy in a way that an elite footballer needs to be and of course everybody has aches and pains, but I just think that, we'll see if that ever changes. And I almost wonder if maybe it would be good for him to take a half season off and try to get his body right and explore with his team, whatever he does physically. As for the sort of intangibles and leadership side of things, he does remind me a little bit of and I don't want to say he's the same player. I don't want you to misconstrue me, but he reminds me a little bit of where Messi was at this stage in his career. I don't know if you remember Messi in 2014 or 2016, where it was sort of like he still hadn't figured out how to live in this world with his personality, which isn't particularly extroverted and which isn't particularly charismatic.
Yeah.
And he was doing great things at the club level, obviously way more than Pulisic has, but it was always sort of like, what have you done for the national team? They fell just short in the 2014 final. And then he missed that penalty in 2016 in the Copa America final and penalties. And he actually retired from the national team for a couple months until they talked him back into it. So I do suspect that guys who they don't have that type A personality in terms of how they interact socially with folks. Maybe there's, some growth that happens a little bit later. And also maybe there's some reason not to completely write off the next 4 to 8 years of his career as far as the U.S. national team is concerned. I'm not saying I count on it, but it feels reminiscent to me.
You hope there's time. It's not over, but I get like it. It's a he's got to be better. He's got to be better
for sure, absolutely, and he's got to be healthy.
Yep,
that's the
no
main
doubt.
thing. He's got to be healthy.
All right, Ian, remind everybody where they're finding you.
I'm on Twitter at Yak Diesel, or X, I guess we call it now. I'm writing regularly at Forbes.com. Just Google my name, Ian Nicholas Quillen. We'll see if I'm at the final. FIFA doesn't really let us know until 48 hours before the matches. So
helpful.
We'll see if I get to go or not. It would be wonderful to go. It would also be totally fine at this point to watch from my couch.
I get it. It's been a long month. It's been a long month, man. It's been a hard month. Still, it's a World Cup final.
and then 5 days after the final, I will be back at Camden Yards on Friday night, July 24th, covering the Atlanta Braves for MLB.com.
Very good. Ian, always appreciate you, brother. Thanks for doing it.
All right, man. Thank you so much, guys.
See you, buddy.
Cheers.
Ian Nicholas Quillen with us talking World Cup as the final is set. We'll come back.